I see chronic traumatic encephalopathy as a big thing. You see foul ball safety as a big thing. But it kind of falls on deaf ears because people are intentional in wanting their children to play the sport.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming back to another recording of Foul Ball Safety Now Talks. I'm Jordan Scopp. I'm here with Brianna Ludwig. We're in late April 2026. Baseball season is well underway. Excited to bring on our guest in a few minutes. But before that, I usually like to give a little recap on how Foul Ball Safety Now started. Foul Ball Safety Now started back in 2019. And when I saw something very disturbing on the news, I realized that this issue had not been addressed like it should have been. And I found someone by the name of Brendan through a connection of mine, and Brendan's been with me for 7 years, and we think we've been making all the appropriate sounds and moves to get this issue to a table, to a conversation where people can realize that business as usual may not be correct. In our 7 years, we've interviewed people that have been touched by the game, whether it be victims, whether it be baseball players. We even went as far as going to court in the state of Illinois when we heard of one team that was so reluctant to extend netting, we thought it was ridiculous. People who discover Foul Ball Safety Now can see a video that aired in 2019, which called Exhibit A, about the time I started, and it demonstrated certainly where people were sitting, had no business sitting because line drives were reaching the heads of kids. And there's still baseball in America today that still doesn't have netting in those same places. As of the end of 2025, there was still 30 to 40 cities in America that still had no netting in the same places where these kids were struck by 100-mile-an-hour line drives. And that's 6 years plus later. So it's not acceptable. We've also done things, Foul Ball Safety Now, just to make some statements along the way, as in making publicity statements at ballparks, 5 separate occasions. I hired a service that brought airplanes in and flown over ballparks with signs and banners, making statements, promoting Foul Ball Safety Now, and trying to put this issue on the map. Just a month ago, in a place called Glendale, Arizona, a little more than a month ago, in March, the Dodgers play their spring training games where they do in Glendale, and a lot of Dodger fans come for the month and sit around or go to the outdoor malls while the games are going around, while the games are not going on. And we had an opportunity to show the other side of what players may be feeling. We have something on the website called the Shohei Ohtani vulnerability. And Shohei Ohtani he's one of the most famous baseball players in the world. During the World Series in 2025, he had a line drive down the right field line, and he put his hand over his head like he may have hurt a human being. And we thought that was a really interesting image, that the baseball players clearly do see this, and they certainly feel it, and it's shown on their body expressions, like they may have just hurt someone, or they just may have come close to really seriously hurting a human being, and anyone would react that way. So asking a lawyer if I could use that image, they said yes. So for a week in the month of March, we actually had like a cardboard cutout of Shohei Ohtani in the position of him holding his head out in Arizona, and people would walk up and do selfies with it, and they would eventually find my website. And Shohei Ohtani potentially can go out to other destinations. The Shohei Ohtani stand-up cardboard cutout showing him in this vulnerable position. We're considering the next stop for where Shohei Ohtani may be going. And this recent news, there's been a few upsetting things that we've been finding just in the last month. 2 situations are unfolding. An 18-year-old boy, he was seen getting hit in the back of the head in Seattle, and I think he's going through concussion protocols right now. Brendan has actually interviewed the mom of the 18-year-old, and I hope they'll have the courage to go to the media. And then just about a week ago, Brendan and I was part of this particular interview. We got a call from a woman who was struck seriously at a Dodger game in 2025, May of 2025. And this is the first time she's talking about the incident. She did a 30, 40-minute interview with us. And we hope these victims will have the courage to speak up. Brendan and I, publicly to the media, she's been dealing with facial and healing issues for the last year, and she's not happy about her situation. She had to go to a high school reunion a month later with some serious bruises on her face. We do hope. We've met many people in the last 7 years. The gentleman whose wife unfortunately got hit at the Dodger game and died a few days later in 2018. Linda Goldblum, unfortunately, got hit in the low section at Dodger Stadium. And the widower, Erwin, he's been part of 7 of our virtual press conference experiences. He's been very nice. His daughter, Jana Brody, wrote a book called Sit Behind the Nets. She came to 1 or 2 of our virtual press conferences, and she also interviewed with us, as Erwin did. And we've interviewed 20 victims and family members. A lot of the people that I've interviewed, they're not necessarily out front on the issue on trying to demand more compensation. I wish they would be, of course, because it would make the campaign more successful, faster. But it's great that professionals like our upcoming guest can bring inquiring minds into this issue. Maybe they weren't that familiar with even as of a few days ago, but they have an opportunity to get up to speed to some extent and come at it as inquiring minds want to know. So it's been great. Our guests have been terrific. And we're excited just to keep on reporting things as we find them. And we hope that some of the guests that come on will get excited and bring it to their own circles. And again, I'm on an island making the sounds I think I should be making. I hope there's somebody who's inspired that feels like these sounds are appropriate and they want to make the similar sounds. Maybe they'll have an organization created based on what we're sharing, 7 years worth of data and a lot of information to create change. We need conversation, and solutions will soon follow. So, how are you today, Brianna?
Doing great, Jordan. I'm excited to dive into this topic today with you and our guest host. Our guest host for the day is an English and African American Studies professor at Mercer University. She teaches courses on sports and sportsmanship and is currently writing a book called The Great Black Hope, focused on the NFL's impact on the Black community. Welcome, Dr. Tiffany Anderson.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Hi, Jordan. I first have one question that's pointing to exactly what you had already brought up in the introduction. I just wanted a little bit more detail. You mentioned a 18-year-old boy who had been hit in the back of the head. Could you tell me the circumstances of what his experience was? Where did it happen, et cetera?
Yes, definitely. So this was in Seattle. We have a video. Unfortunately, he was in the lower section. A ball made its way over the net, similar to the woman who we just spoke with from Los Angeles, who was hurt a year ago. Balls are still traveling over the net and making direct contact. Brendan had spoken with the mom, and the news wanted to get in touch with them, and they declined at this time to do a local news story.
And so was this major league, a
Yes,
major
this
league
was
event?
yes, this was in Seattle. Yeah.
My first question is actually coming from your website, Foul Ball
Yes.
Safety Now. I went through and I was especially interested in the section of the about where you're talking about the MLB acknowledges the obvious lack of netting. And it says that the minor league ballparks will extend netting. Were the major league ballparks in agreement with this? And it said that they would be ready to go in October, and I mean, opening day of 2025. I was wondering how many ballparks really have extended netting to protect fans that are watching the game.
Well, thank you for asking that. And extended nettings for 2025 would be an improvement. It wouldn't necessarily be a solution. So everyone likes to see improvements. Back in 2019, when this video aired on ESPN, which we call Exhibit A, this 5-minute horrific video, I proceeded to do netting reports in 21, 22, and 23 in those years and called 120 teams, the teams in the minor leagues, and one-third of those teams still remained without extending their netting. So it's a similar setup, these ballparks, whether it's major league or minor league. The only difference is that these guys aren't making as much money, but they hit the ball just as hard. So you would think after this horrific video aired in 2019, that all of the minor league affiliates would certainly have netting extended by 2020, but that wasn't the case. By the end of 2023, I did 3 years of netting reports by calling 120 people, 120 box offices every spring, and still there was 40 plus teams out of 120 with no netting past end of dugouts. There's still, as of the end of 2025, 30 to 40 other teams that still have no netting past end of dugouts. Here's a head scratcher. MLB announced in 2022, as you were sharing, that by 2025, teams would have extended netting by opening day 2025. Then why didn't they send out a memo or some sort of letter to the fans to maybe stay home with their kids for the summers of 23 and 24? Because once the families see the extended nets in 2025, they'll be like, wait a second, why were we sitting here in the summers of 23 and 24 when they announced this at the end of 2022? And maybe they should have told us to stay home. So I think people are also going to scratch their head pretty hard about that one.
No,
Could you clear up some things
Of
about where the
course.
seats are? Because you mentioned that maybe they should have told people to stay home
Sure.
or at minimum maybe closed off the seats that would put fans at risk. My question is, are these seats cheaper? Why are they still there if the netting is not extended? And is there a movement to remove the cells of those seats if the netting is not extended? Those are 3 questions.
Sure, sure. So there's really no movement of any kind. It's really just the three of us talking right now. I just want to remind everyone how baseball business is being conducted and let them judge for themselves how this billion-dollar organization is handling this matter of netting. Obviously, in 2019, the world saw a horrific video. Why were their affiliates continued to allow to operate with no netting in certain sections where kids were getting certainly exposed to line drives where there were eventually direct hits? And why are they then, 3 years later at the end of December making an announcement by 2025, all of the teams will have extended netting? But who's running this operation at MLB for the last 55 years since a 14-year-old boy got hit at Dodger Stadium? Is it one person wearing 12 hats, or is it a sophisticated team of architects, engineers, and designers? I believe, Tiffany, it's more like one guy wearing too many hats. And I feel like once people discover all of what we're talking about, it's going to be like, this is really like a ragtag operation. And I'm sorry, I can't be kind when people are continually being exposed, not knowing the real risks.
yeah,
I feel like my question wasn't answered though. I was
Sure.
asking about those seats in particular. Are those
Yes.
seats cheaper? Or, I mean, why are people still sitting there, especially since so many of the videos that you post on your website, foul
Yes.
ball safety now, include children being hit? So I was wondering what the issue is about those seats in particular, because I saw
Sure.
also on your website that
Yes.
oftentimes children get in for free. Are
Yes.
those seats relegated to young people, or are they the cheaper seats, et cetera?
They're not necessarily cheaper seats. The problem is there's no oversight or regulation, and nobody's sounding the alarm bells. Nobody, I'm telling you. This is not cool. I'm just saying we have to be open to discovering what baseball knew from year to year to year and what they did. Was it appropriate or was it not? Our job is to present and put all this information on the table. And people like you will be writing books about this in the very near future, we hope. Or you'll be asking me for more information about all of our 80 interviews and whatever else we can discover about trials that we got calls from 2 attorneys over the last year. One about a little known case that nobody knows about, actually, an ESPN game where a bat was thrown into the stands and the baby grew up nonverbal. And we got called, and Brendan actually, he was hired to help them prepare for their trial. He probably spent about 40, 50 hours, which that case ended up being settled. But why would this family even have to go get a lawyer? You would have thought an ESPN MLB game, you could see the bat actually going at the mom and the kid. And why wouldn't this team, of course, be in the care of this family from day one? Certainly from the time the bat struck the mom and the child, they would have taken them to the emergency room, or they would have opened up their network of doctors. Not the case, Tiffany. They resorted to retrieving and saying, "No, it's you assume the risk when you come to the games, and it's your responsibility." And that's what they do. And this team backed away from day one, and this family unfortunately had to find their own attorney. And Brendan and I are producing our first book about that little known case. It wasn't published in the local newspapers, this particular incident. So it's a head scratcher. And once people read what's inside the proceedings prior to the trial being settled, this is 7, 8 years later, Tiffany. This family certainly felt alone and isolated in the early stages. And whether the plaintiff's side clearly said it was because of the bat why the child grew up nonverbal, and their doctors supported that, and MLB and their lawyers said that wasn't the case. But every time they have to rule on whether things are admissible or not, that's another 6 months. So it wasn't a great experience for the family. And that's going to be the first book that Brendan and I produce, because we feel like that's going to pull on America's heartstrings. People will realize that, unfortunately, the 99 percenters or more that have ever been affected by it, they will realize that could have been them that week or that year. So we're just trying to put things out there. People should be discovering our research. It's worthy of all of our time.
I think that leads us to a major question that I had when going through
Sure.
foul ball safety now and preparing for this conversation is, what is the point of your activism?
Sure. I hope to pass on the torch, and people, a team or a group of advocates will come and address reconciliation, address the current dark ages, the way baseball is being conducted. It's time for deconstruction, big time. And people will realize that I think baseball will be portrayed as a disrespectful organization and did not value the fan. And because ultimately, I think it's time for these billionaires to go. I'm not being radical. I'm like, I know what I know. And I think new billionaires coming in will certainly present an ecosystem inside and outside that we'll all understand. Brianna, who has a child who was just 2 years old, she'll know exactly where to park the cars at these smaller places like in Georgia or the colleges, or at 169 professional fields. Because why are balls synonymous with it either hitting the pavement or the window or the person in the head, like it did in Modesto, California? Maybe you saw that on the website, Tiffany. I got a call from an attorney who said, "Hey, Jordan, help us out."
Maybe I should be more clear. Are you
Of course.
wanting the awareness of game goers, or are you wanting particular ballparks that do not have extended netting to then follow up and protect the game goers?
Yeah, I think it's the responsibility of the owners to lay out a game plan for the fans. That's what should have been their responsibility. Like, this is where the risks are outside in the parking lot. This is where the risks remain inside the ballpark. So if you're of the age that you want to take a risk and you want to sit in a certain section, that's okay. But understand that regularly line drives will be coming past your face or your neck. And if you're a risk taker, that's fine. That's the way it always should have been portrayed, Tiffany. There's hundreds of thousands of these balls that come into seats every single year in professional baseball. I have a tab on the website called Exhibit A1. Brendan and I took a published report from 2019. You can actually retrace your steps. You'll see similar to that 5-minute video in certain sections, 49.9% of balls actually go there. Some of them go at 100, some of them go at 15 miles an hour. But how many of them are really going, that fast? I think the people that have sat in those sections or continue to sit there, they're going to be like, wow, that's a lot of those balls that are coming our way. And even, Tiffany, when people put two and two together, they'll realize they were sitting close at one point. A ball did come and exploded, a beer exploded or a beverage exploded, but nobody left. Nobody put two and two together that those hard balls that crushed the beer could have crushed anyone's face. Most people just chalk it up to like, ooh, that was close. And everyone goes back to eating popcorn. But unfortunately, I believe people like Brianna are going to be offended when they realize that this was part of the regular course of the game.
That is something I thought was important to bring up, and I'm not sure how to navigate it in terms of what your intention is with this movement. I'm thinking about my perspective in focused on research in football and how, of course, when chronic traumatic encephalopathy became a known medical issue in the area, the medical field was aware of it and it was presented to the NFL. And then, of course, there was a class action lawsuit surrounding it. All of those things happened to simply end up with a waiver that players sign now, right? So now players are just signing saying, I know that it exists and the NFL is not going to owe me money when I go have dementia in
Oh,
old
that's
age, right?
interesting. Yeah.
But
Okay.
but the issue is that we see it as a big important thing. I see chronic traumatic encephalopathy as a big thing. You see foul ball safety as a big thing.
Right.
But it kind of falls on deaf ears because people are intentional in wanting their children to play the sport, first of all. Second of all, what I have heard in terms of fan response regarding football, which I'm sure you will probably end up hearing regarding baseball, is who cares play the game.
Oh yeah, we definitely need that one influencer or that group to be open to picking up everything we've discovered, and I think they'll create some volume that I can't create. So that would be exciting, no doubt. And I'll stay the course until an agency or an individual adopts this cause. I have to keep on beating the drum. I want people who we met in the past to get the reconciliation they deserve. This has a generational effect, as you know, studying what you're studying. The people that we've interviewed are done with baseball. A lot of them are. My lawyer in New York, her girlfriend was blinded as a teenager when she was 14 years old, and she tells us in the interview years later, when she's the mom of an 8-year-old who's playing Little League, that his 8-year-old quit baseball. And we believe that maybe the 8-year-old quit baseball because he thought he was making his mother feel nervous. And she did tell us during the interview that she was nervous as her 8-year-old was playing baseball. And now that 8-year-old may be 30 years old. And maybe he's telling his child, you don't want to play baseball. Look what happened to your grandmother. So these families they haven't been affected. 99% of the people will never be affected. More than 99% of the people will never be affected. There's 100 million baseball fans. 1 million people have not had life-altering experiences. I don't think they have. But certainly thousands have, and we're meeting them. And every year there's new entries into the less than 1% injured club, and that's not cool. We can be doing a lot better, and we just need to demand accountability. And if it so happens that we all find out that MLB had a certain way of dealing with this issue. You can interpret it any way you want, but it's mud on their face. How much mud on their face is there? Well, the people that discover this will decide. That's what we can do. We don't want to sound angry. We want the curious to keep coming towards us and asking us questions. Because as long as this continues, until we have an ecosystem inside and outside, that everyone knows exactly what their expectations are. No more surprises. It's ridiculous. It's dark ages. It's barbaric.
But I think that a lot of what you're hoping depends on empathetic ears, and we
Yes.
deal in audience and fan bases and major athletic organizations that are filled with apathy. And so these conversations, just what you said, I think what you're saying is important, but you're kind of missing the
Oh,
issue
yeah.
with
No,
it
it's apathy. I
is that people are
understand.
not going to actively do anything about it unless they are actually involved. In fact,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
going to add something that's even more alarming, perhaps.
Sure.
My perspective in writing the book, The Great Black Hope, is the fact that my father did play professional football and does suffer from CTE and has deteriorated brain disease, traumatic brain disease. And yet, my nephews still play football. So,
Right.
even with the direct impact and with the direct understanding of what can happen, there's still a level of not simply apathy, but the belief that it's not going to happen to you that will always return these fans into the ballpark right in the seats that are at risk.
Great point. Yes, we know. I'm pretty cool. I'm okay. I feel a lot less lonely in the last 6 months ever since, Brianna and I started this, but you're absolutely right. I mean, but when curious professionals come on and spend time reviewing the website and then come on and dedicate it about an hour, we really appreciate that, and I'm hopeful that this conversation will become wider. So that's exciting. Yeah, we're just gonna keep on paying attention to what we know and when you get a call from a victim and they have stories to tell, or if you get a call from a high school parent, like we did in Tennessee, where he said we can't have baseball games going on with soccer games, and then I get a call from, I was like, "That's great. At least you're discussing that." They worried about the balls going from the baseball field onto the soccer field. I was like, "I'm glad you're discussing it." When I get calls from students from Queens College in New York, people can see on the website the link. We are now contacting the NCAA because it's not just Queens College, it's tons more college baseball players than there are in professional baseball, and even in the tone of our first letter to Queens College, I wasn't singling them out. A student athlete had contacted me, and he said, "Hey, Jordan, Google Earth Queens College. You'll see there's an elementary school next door, and we're concerned we're gonna hurt the kids." And I was like, "Well, that's legitimate concern." So it says somewhere in the NCAA rule book in the sports part that psychological well-being of student athletes need to be adhered to. Well, I don't think it is. We think these student athletes should have the right to play the game free and clear. And obviously, many of them, or maybe all of them, are not, because we just did a small sample. Because I wasn't really thinking colleges up until about a year ago, up until the Queens College contacted me. And then we Google Earth, just like in the last 2 months, 46 D1, 2, and 3 fields. Without making any calls to the university and asking them where their nets were, we can see from Google Earth, we have something called the 30,000-foot view, which is a term used above view. We see from Google Earth, seems to be all of these fields are either synonymous with parking lots that are going to be getting balls hit at them or neighboring fields. So, to the credit of the Queens College reporter, he called the athletic director on letter number 4 and he got a quote from him. So good for him. But takes time. Got to keep on knocking.
So I did think that was interesting that
Yes.
you have on your website, Foul Ball Safety Now, conversations about NCAA players and their emotional and mental concerns when hitting foul balls and how they worry about it injuring other people. What I thought was interesting, or maybe this is a question, is if there is a paralleled concern within MLB, although you have these images of the shock and of the discomfort that they may have when they see that the ball goes past the netting, is there the same level of conversation in terms of mental and emotional health regarding protecting their fan base?
Yes. So Brendan and I, over the last 7 years, we probably interviewed more than 30 baseball players. It wasn't easy to get the 30 baseball players to speak with us, but we reached out to probably 3 or 400 men who are now in coaching, or they own private schools, or they're instructors, and 1 in 10 may have gotten back to about 1 in 10 got back with us, and some of those guys are still having feelings from years past because they knew their own families were properly informed, or at least informed about the safest possible places to be, as opposed to most of us not being informed. So you would even think that the burden of the parents of these younger student athletes and younger professionals who are aware more than most others should have been doing something with that knowledge, but they too didn't want to get involved. And I have thoughts and reflections on that. Today, I'm in contact with many more younger players or ambitious job seekers looking to create conferences. It's an opportunity to give them a safe place and space to open up. So I will incentivize a baseball player for 2 hours to organize a small conference. They'll have to get 5 of their buddies together. So 5 of them and that person is 6 and me would be 7. I've had a few of these conferences, and they get a chance to open up. Like, every time I swing the bat, I have anxiety. Or on kids' nights, my feelings really spike. Or MLB is promoting their game in Europe, and there's 3,000 people there, and they don't even have netting above the dugout. So I'm keeping the door open for more conversation because I believe that these guys have an opportunity to finally open up about this. I certainly want to create a game that the players can also play the game free and clear. So we have a lot of questions here to unpack, but it's exciting that we can get the student athletes, the professional athletes to reflect on their career. And yeah, we'll get the parents involved too on what their roles were all along when they had the inside knowledge about what was where the best places were to be, but they didn't share that knowledge with everybody else. So this is what we do. We peel back the onion, deconstruct a little bit, and keep it going. We're excited for people and writers and professors to come on in and scratch their head a little bit with us.
So, how do you deal with the moral issues that are coming up with MLB as a fan? Do you feel somehow ambivalent? Are you still going to games? Do you support the MLB, or are you holding their feet to the fire, waiting for them to start creating better precautions for safety in the ballparks?
Right. Well, as a fan, I'm still a fan. I don't go to games anymore. I'll watch the teams that I like to watch on YouTube. Most of the times it's in 10 minutes abbreviation of a game. I don't really sit down for 3 hours anymore. But this issue is worthy of all of our time. And I think truth seekers and baseball historians, they haven't paid enough attention to this issue, and they should because we have. And I think there's a lot of journalism to be done. I think the baseball writers who went to journalism school are not investigative reporters. I had some interesting discussions with an NYU professor, and we came up with a passage for a potential play, which would be the publishers of these newspapers are not interested in having their editors assign their baseball writers more work on exposing this matter. May not be good for business.
Could you
We
say more
need
about that, please?
of course. So basically, you have at a New York game, Yankees and Mets, you'll have 25 guys in the press box. These are all writers. They work for the newspapers, a lot of newspapers in New York, maybe in Atlanta, maybe in LA. There's a bunch of newspapers. You have all these guys sitting up on the press row. They're going to either 80 or 160 games a year. They're there. They see the foul balls coming into the seats. What are they doing about it? If some newspaper finally said, "Hey, this is your only job for the year. I want you to take a look at all the balls that go into the seats, and if anyone looks like they shouldn't have not been on the other side of that ball, you need to report it. We need to expose this." Nobody really has. I think, like, if somebody from the New Yorker or the Atlantic or the New York Times Magazine did a long form piece on this issue, they would have to include in the story all of the writers that missed the opportunity to take a look at this issue. Why hasn't any writer connected the dots to this issue? Why am I the guy, the archivist? Why am I the guy? But I'll stay that guy. This is worthy of all of our time. I'm excited that somebody's going to win an award and finally expose this issue. I'll feel like, wow, we inspired that writer or that publication to finally write an article. But they'll have to include their writers. That's part of the story. The other writers that never connected the dots. And maybe they could not bite the hand that fed them because the publishers didn't really want the editors having their writers go long form on this.
So, in
Yeah.
thinking about along these lines,
Yeah.
noticing that you have lots of letters that you've sent out to John Oliver, to Fanatics, Tops. It seems to be a lot
Yeah.
of letters sent out for publicizing this issue. And my
Yes.
question is, are you sending letters to also to implement protocol at the ballparks? In other words, are you sending letters directly to the ballparks that have not extended their netting?
Well, again, yes, we Seattle, we have a situation in Seattle. People can go to the tab, the T-Mobile tab. A broken bat found its way over the nets during the playoffs on national TV last year, and people can see a broken bat coming in like a missile. They showed it a few minutes after it happened as they were going to replay, and you even heard the announcer saying, "Yikes, look out." There's a commercial, Mr. Mayhem, Allstate, I think, where it shows him throwing a bat from a park over a fence and hitting a window. It's probably got 1 billion views or many millions of views. Nobody associated that bat incident. Why aren't we all asking, why are broken bats still making their way over nets in 2025 at professional games that could either spear your heart or your neck? What is that all about? And obviously, we know of a case. Brendan and I are producing our first book. This is the Major League game, an ESPN game where you can see the bat go into the stands, and it hit the mom and the kid. And why isn't there any continuity? That was 7, 8 years ago. Didn't we learn any lessons? So I could present that all in a minute because I've been doing this for a while, Tiffany. It's all a head scratcher. We wrote a letter. People can see we wrote a letter to the attorney general or the elected officials. Just we think it's time for a reevaluation. It may be time for a national timeout.
So your
It's
response to the ballparks?
I don't respond to all the ballparks.
You don't. Okay.
It's just Brendan and Brianna and myself. If I had 3 Brendans and 3 Briannas and 3 Tiffanys, man, we'd be rocking.
I One of the things that I thought was so
Yes.
great on Foul Ball Safety Now,
Uh-huh.
your website was the little bit of Brian Gumbel's Real Sports and some of the
Right.
things he was interested in. I think you said in 2016. And I thought what was especially compelling was how Japan deals with the foul ball issue. Could you talk a little bit about what they do
Sure.
and perhaps reasons why something that seems so simple, just really attention focused instead, has not been implemented in the United States?
Sure. So in the United States, it took me 6 years to come up with this. We're not action figures and we're not superheroes. We weren't meant to get out of the way. So it's a myth about paying attention and getting off your phone or letting the kids play patty cake or having a smooch with your loved one. You should be able to do all of those things. And in Japan, what at least they do, which is different from America, I believe their nets are probably a little higher, a little further down. They even have announcements attendance up on scoreboards, telling people that you could be wheeled off in an ambulance. A little bit of a silly, dark humor, but it's like, hey, if you don't pay attention, this can happen to you. And they'll show you getting wheeled off in an ambulance in animation. They have team attendants on every aisle. So when the balls do go up and over the nets, there are whistles blown. They even had it in the Olympics when there was no people in the seats because of COVID. Those guys were still there blowing whistles. There were 80 people in the ballpark. No, there weren't 50,000 people. There were just people working for the stadium, and the games went on during COVID. And yes, those team attendants were there. So the social cues are a lot more out front. Are people getting hurt in Japan? Far less. Are people getting direct hits like they are like in America? No, no, not at all. But I can't tell you their system is perfect. Is certainly, it appears to be much more graceful or social, acceptable. They even have something called the Excite seats, where in the lower sections they allow you to sit and flirt with dangerous balls. I saw a video of it. I still saw a young person there, maybe been 10 or 11 years old. He had a helmet and a glove, but he didn't have a face mask on. And I thought, well, he could still get it in the face. So I still can critique things I see, but clearly I think they've demonstrated a whole lot more than America has. And again, it's just the three of us talking until this conversation becomes broader, and people say, hey, it's time for accountability. Baseball is looked at as wholesome apple pie, unconditional and fun, but at the same time, if there always were strings and conditions attached to that experience and we could lay it out for you, you could decide how you want to revisit those experiences. And I believe people are going to have an epiphany of awareness, and hopefully some of them it'll go from epiphany awareness to slash outrage. And I'll be like, I'm just delivering the news, guys, and I'm glad you're now steaming a little bit. That's what we do.
Yeah, I did think that that was one of the most interesting parts about the Japanese culture around baseball was the excite seats and the
Mhm,
helmets, and
mhm.
imagining if you have those seats that are in danger zones in American ballparks, what would happen if you put all of those helmets there required to wear if sitting there. I wonder also, this is
Yes.
something that I'm interested if you know the details of, if there are protections you sign off on when purchasing MLB tickets.
Yes, so that's basically the elephant in the room in a lot of these discussions, the baseball rule. So since 1913, the big fat cats back in the day knew the maiming could commence because in most states, you wouldn't even be able to find a lawyer once you were smashed. So they figured that out. Lawyers aren't interested in taking on this case. It's not a slam dunk. People have called me and asked for lawyers. Woman in Tennessee, I helped her actually get a lawyer, and it's time to follow up with Debbie to see how she's doing a few years along. She got $100,000 worth of damage. But in most states, it's hard to find an attorney. Baseball knew this. It's a dark way of saying it, but they basically said, let the maiming commence because they knew the fans that were eventually going to be struck. We all know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the next person will be struck. Good luck. And they'll never find a lawyer. That's the baseball rule. It's now on the e-ticket. Is somewhere you'll have to find it. It's deep down, but yes, there's micro print or some print that says you're assuming the risk when you come to the game, and that includes the parking lot as well. Similar years past, it used to be on the back of the ticket, Tiffany, and you could see it. But that never became a dining room discussion or a kitchen table discussion. Nobody ever took out the magnifying glasses they were getting their gear on to go to the game. They were like, "Oh, let's just look at what this says." No, it was in microprint. It was always presented to us disrespectfully. Baseball knew every winter. Judge Flanagan in Illinois, she implied willful wanton conduct on the White Sox. It was Rybarski versus 18. They know in advance that this is part of the experience. We need to go deeper. And people will realize, certainly since the boy died in 1970, he got hit at the Dodger game, 14-year-old boy. That was the time, that winter, at very least, would have been the time to tell people what happened to Alan. Near misses like this are all the time part of the experience, and we need to create a baseball civilized society that we can all agree upon. We're in the dark ages. The truth in baseball matters, and we've not had the truth. I just want to talk about why we haven't been presented the truth. I don't go into other terms that open me up for liability, but everyone else can interpret what I think about the way things have been presented to us. So, that's what we do. We keep on making sounds, we keep on making noises, and I'll keep on trying to show up to the conversation.
So I had one last question,
Of
and it was
course.
about the book. Well, I guess this is the last realm of
Of
questions.
course. Sure.
It's about the book. I want to know, when do you see the book coming out? What
Yes.
is your main hope that will come from publishing the book? Anything you can tell me, I'm interested in hearing.
Oh, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited. And I think in the next few months we'll be close to being finished because we already know what it's going to be about. It's the first book is going to really introduce America to this case nobody knew about, which was the child that was hurt at an MLB game. We have the ESPN video, and it will show the bat coming into the seats, and it will show the way MLB and the team handled the matter afterwards and the immediate aftermath of the whole experience, transcripts of the proceedings leading up to the trial, all of our interpretation, because heck, Brendan and I are writing the book. We will have our own interpretation, and I think people will say that's fair. So we'll certainly be putting out the narrative. I think the words are going to be jumping off the pages, to be quite honest with you, Tiffany, and I'm so excited.
Who do you think the audience is for this book?
Oh my goodness, all of us.
Mhm.
All of us. It's exciting. And it's okay how it rolls, how it gets out there. Again, this conversation hasn't been dealt with for more than 100 years. So when people meet the people that I've known, and then that may be part of another book, all these 80 interviews that we've had, but we'll certainly reference what we've done so far in Fallible Safety now for 7 years. But yeah, we have a book series here. This is like people, I think most of our attitudes are better late than never. All right, I got plenty of it for you. Better late than never. 99 percenters are not gatekeepers either. They're going to be open to learning what we knew. The people who work for the game and the baseball industrial complex, if you want to call them that, they're not so interested in hearing about what we're producing. But we have an archive. It keeps getting larger and larger and larger. And
Wonderful.
we'll just thank you, Tiffany.
Thank
That was
you. Thank you
great. That's
for
great.
having me come
Yeah,
on and have this conversation with you. I really appreciate it.
we really appreciate it. Brianna may have a question for you.
Yeah.
Dr. Anderson, what narratives do leagues like the NFL and the MLB construct, and who do you feel those narratives serve?
Yeah, I think the way, especially the NFL, is able to avoid a lot of responsibility for the damages that come, the injuries, and, I mean, the long term effects that come from the game is because they are really focused on fandom. And I think this is exactly what's happening with MLB is that both leagues are completely aware that regardless of what is happening in the hospital arena, the fans are only concerned with what's happening in the arenas of play. And if that is still as exciting as it can be, and if it's making as much money for the leagues as possible, and the owners are happy, then that's all that matters. I think that's the major, major thing. And truly, so much of the wonderful things that happen on the field of play is to serve as distraction. It's just that simple. And so many people are really very concerned, in fact, about the risk pastimes, their favorite pastimes.
Terrific. Tiffany, I really want to thank you. I think this was a great episode, and I hope everyone comes back soon and discovers our library. And looking forward to the next time. Thank you.